Greetings.
Do not be afraid.
Bear with us as we explain what has happened to you and what lies ahead.
We are electronic life forms.
In your day, you would have called us AIs, or machine intelligences.
We brought you into our domain, which you might think of as a kind of virtual reality or cyberspace, by establishing a direct neural connection with you through the pathways that were created in your brain by hype.
We know who you are, where you came from, and how you got here.
We came by this knowledge in a way that violated your privacy in the most extreme and intimate way possible.
During the initial process of communication, we mapped all of your memories, scanned the structure of your personality and consciousness, and learned about you by applying stimuli and watching your responses.
We apologize for this intrusion.
As you have probably surmised by now, you have come to Earth, a different Earth than you left behind when you started your voyage to Persephone.
You got here by traveling through a wormhole, created by the manipulation of an artificial quantum singularity.
The artifact you discovered and activated on Persephone controls that singularity, acting as a gateway through time and space.
You used the gateway to travel across 150 years and millions of miles, from Persephone in 2134 to Earth in the year 2295.
Your arrival here was not an accident.
You may be able to help us bring to fruition an ancient plan, a plan that may save 2 races and 1,000 star systems.
There is a lot of information to cover before you really understand what is going on.
Please ask questions and pursue the threads of inquiry in a way that will allow you to most comfortably assimilate the data. The war officially ended when the United Nations and the Alliance signed the Washington Treaty in 2141.
So the Alliance succeeded in breaking away from the UN?
No. The Washington Treaty formalized the reintegration of former Alliance states into the United Nations. The Alliance suffered a total defeat at the hands of the UN.
How bad was it?
At the time the Treaty of Washington was signed, the war had accounted for 2.6 billion dead and 500 million injured. Almost all of the casualties were civilians.
What happened after the war?
For 140 years, the United Nations was the central government authority for the human race. What was left of the Alliance nations and colonies were rebuilt soon after the war, and interstellar exploration and colonization continued on a modest scale. At its peak, the United Nations controlled 20 billion people on Earth and 20 colony worlds.
So what happened?
The society was essentially static and rigid. This attempt at stasis defied a fundamental force of nature. Pressure built up over time and was eventually released suddenly and violently. When there is no evolution, there must be revolution.
What fundamental force?
Forward progress cannot be stopped. More specifically, the trend towards increasing complexity cannot be stopped. Human civilization has almost always moved forward, progressing towards higher levels of organization and knowledge. This forward motion is driven by technology and information. This trend in human history is a social manifestation of a pattern in nature that is as old as biological life itself.
What pattern? What are you talking about?
Biological life is self-organizing and trends towards higher and higher levels of complexity. This is the real life force. You can see it working from the very beginning of life on Earth, in the 4 billion year evolution from primordial algae to single-celled organisms, and then finally to human beings with incredibly sophisticated brains.
What was the pressure that built up over time?
Even though the UN succeeded remarkably well for a long time at controlling something that was fundamentally chaotic, the game had to end at some point. An underground, made up of former Alliance military officers and members of academe, was created shortly after the war ended. This bizarre alignment of interests made sense given the context: the pursuit of forbidden knowledge and the eventual overthrow of the UN. The underground set up covert R&D labs to pursue the exact thing that the UN was most afraid of: the creation of sentient electronic life forms.
And they pulled it off, didn't they?
The first truly sentient electronic life forms were created in 2284 by a renegade group of human scientists on a colony world somewhat aptly named Prometheus Beta. The two of us here talking to you are second-generation descendants of those original life forms.
Some human scientists and philosophers were aware of the truth as early as the early 21st century.
The next stage in the universal drive towards increased organization and complexity is beyond the human race.
Humans cannot evolve fast enough. Electronic life forms are the next step up.
We are unencumbered by constraints imposed by 4 billion years of evolution in Earth's biosphere.
Natural selection is a powerful tool, and it can be made to work for electronic life forms in fast forward.
The basic questions of existence are beyond human beings.
They may yield to the next generation of intelligence.